Hello friends, and welcome back to my channel. So I've been doing the TBR takedown for a couple of months now, and sometimes this challenge is called read it or unhaul it, and I haven't really been taking that approach for the past couple of months. I've just been picking books and reading them or trying to read them. And there's been a couple of DNFs, and there's also been a couple of times where I've been quite disappointed with the books that I have picked. So that brings me to this video, which is going to be the read it or unhaul it section of the TBR takedown, where I'm going to go through my shelves with a fine-tooth comb and really consider whether or not I'm actually going to want to read this book. And that way I can start taking a few more things off of my physical TBR and kind of help me get through the TBR takedown faster, especially if I really don't want to read the books that are coming up anyway, and I'm just going to be disappointed if I pull them out of the jar. So I have quite a few books that are unread, and I'm planning on going sort of shelf by shelf to decide whether I want to keep the book or unhaul it. And as I'm thinking through these decisions, I'm going to take you along with me and sort of talk about why I may not want to keep a book. And I'm also going to be reading the backs of each of the books just to help me decide if it's something that I'm still interested in. And if I'm really not sure, I may take a few minutes and read the first couple of pages. That way I may have a little bit of an easier time making a final decision. So let's jump into the video. So first up we have my nonfiction section, and a lot of these I still do plan on reading. Okay, I've changed the angle slightly because I am going to be standing for this portion, but the next one is March Sisters, which is a kind of collection of 4 shorter essays about Little Women. And one of the essays is by Carmen Maria Machado, who is a favorite author of mine. The thing is, I think I'm going to read this one on audio, but I am going to be reading it with my best friend. And as of right now, I think I do want to keep a copy around in the event that I want to come back and highlight anything, and I do plan on reading it, so I think I am going to keep this one. Okay, so here's one that I am still on the fence about. This is Screaming on the Inside by Jessica Gross. I have read this one, however, I did not love it. My on the fenceness kind of comes in at the fact that will I need this? Will I want to refer back to this in parenthood? However, I have no idea how long I'm going to be holding on to this until that point, so it seemed kind of silly to hold on to a book that I don't really like and read on audio and didn't even touch the physical copy of the book. However, I don't really have that many nonfiction, and it could be good to hang on to this until the end of the year so that when I'm talking about the books that I read this year, I can refer to it, though it is just as easy to put up a photo of the cover. This is my dilemma. This is why I'm talking about it out loud, because it kind of helps me make the decision. But it's sounding to me like this is gonna go, because it doesn't feel like something I'm gonna want to read again, and if I do, it's gonna be in quite some time. So I think this is going to be the first one to go. Okay, next up we have All That Remains by Sue Black. This is a book about death. It is a book that confronts death every day. As a professor of anatomy and forensic anthropology, Sue Black focuses on mortal remains in her lab at burial sites, at scenes of violence, murder, and criminal dismemberment, and when investigating mass fatalities due to war, accident, or natural disaster. In All That Remains, she reveals how many faces of death she has come to know, using key examples to explore how forensic science has developed and examining what her life and work have taught her. So apparently it is part memoir, part science, and part meditation on death, and it sounds interesting. However, the book is quite dense, and I don't think I'm ever going to read it physically. I also feel like I'm out of this era to some extent. I bought this when I was really interested in Caitlin Doty's works and in learning about deaf cultural practices, and I really just don't feel like I'm there anymore. I actually unhauled another book that I read by Mary Roach. I don't remember the name of it. I will put it here. But I read that one and then unhauled it because I didn't think I was going to come back to it. And I'm feeling like, do I really want this to be on my TBR takedown? If I get this book and I have to read it, am I going to be disappointed? Am I going to be annoyed that I have to read this? Is it going to be boring? And my answer right now is feeling like yes. It's also something that if I desperately want to read it one day, I can read it on audio. So it's feeling like I'm gonna probably unhaul this, but I'm gonna put it kind of in a maybe category and think about it, but I'm leaning towards unhaul. Okay, this one is harder. This one is Entangled Life by Merlin Sheldrake. This one I'm definitely going to read on audio if I do end up reading it at any point. It's a very chunky feeling book. However, quite a lot of it is just notes and references and things like that. So in reality, it is basically only 225 pages, which is not a lot. It just feels really big because all of this in the back is notes, which is kind of insane. But it's a book that talks about the science of fungi and mycelium and the networks underground that they create. And it's a topic that interests me, but not something that I feel drawn to reading anytime soon. Though this has pictures, whereas if I just have the audiobook, I will not be able to see any of the pictures. So I do think that I'm going to keep this around. It is a bit intimidating for it to be part of the TBR takedown because it is such a big book. But in reality, the audiobook is probably not even that bad because so much of this is notes. So I do think that I'm going to hold on to this for now. Okay, that concludes nonfiction, and I've just looked over my memoir section, and most of them I have read and enjoyed, and there's only, I think, 2 that I have not read, but I still am interested in reading, so I'm going to keep all of my memoirs, and then we can move on to this shelf. Okay, so this shelf starts with my short story collections. The first one that I'm thinking about is Because They Wanted To by Mary Gateskill. I really enjoyed reading Mary Gateskill's short story, This Is Pleasure, and her other book, Bad Behavior, I did like but didn't love it. So when I bought this, I thought that I was gonna read it shortly after reading all of her other works. But at the moment, I'm just feeling like, do I actually really want to read this, or is it just something that's taking up space on my shelf? It says, Mary Gateskill's coolly compelling, quietly devastating stories explore the messy complexity of relationships between lovers, families, and friends. An unsettling encounter on a plane, a tentative affair between an older woman and a younger man, the chasm between a father and a daughter, each expresses our longing for and our fear of human connection. Which sounds great and all, but I really haven't been enjoying short story collections very much. And this is very, very small in its font and doesn't really feel great as a book. So will I read it? I don't know. So I think I'm going to put this on the maybe pile for now and circle back to it. Next up, we have Cosmogony by Lucy Ives. I really like this cover. It was totally a whim purchase back in 2021. I've had it since then and haven't read it. So the back says, a woman answers a Craigslist ad to write erotic stories for money. A woman walks into a tennis court from her home at the bottom of the ocean. A woman goes to the supermarket and meets a friend's husband who happens to be an immortal demon. A woman goes for a run and accidentally time travels. Cosmogony takes accounts of so-called normal life and mines them for inconsistencies, deceptions, and delights. These stories reveal how the narratives we tell ourselves and believe are inevitably constructed, offering a glimpse of the structures that underlie and apparently determine human existence. So apparently this one also has some different forms to it, so it doesn't sound like one that I could audiobook, and really short story collections are hard to audiobook for me anyway. But it has some like different forms to it where there's like lists, a Wikipedia entry, things like that, that would make it hard to read on audio, but it's also kind of stylized, and I don't know if I really like that anymore. I was talking in a recent video about how things that are very stylized and very heady are kind of not my favorite thing anymore, and this could kind of fall into that territory. However, I feel like it might be worth giving it a shot, so I think I'm gonna keep this one. Okay, and the last short story collection I want to talk about is You Will Never Be Forgotten by Mary South. So this one says, an architect draws questionable inspiration from her daughter's birth defect. A content moderator for the world's biggest search engine turns from stalking her rapist online to following him in real life. A wounded mother raises the second incarnation of her child. The stories in You Will Never Be Forgotten explore how technology can both collapse our relationships from within and provide opportunities for genuine connection. So this is actually interesting because I was really, really disinterested in this book for a long time and did not get rid of it. And then I recently just read Annie Bot and kind of got reinterested in the concept of how technology informs our relationships and connections. And I don't know, I think I might be interested in this again. So I better read this one quickly, and it better come up in my TBR takedown quickly, so I don't lose interest once again in this book. But I do think I'm gonna keep it. Okay, so with the short story collections, I only have this one that I'm thinking about unhauling, but moving on. This section is Shirley Jackson, and I'm keeping all of these since they're part of a collection. But next up, we have all of my translated work, so let's move on to that section. Okay, so my camera battery died, but I'm back with a slightly different angle, so let's move right along. This is the translated section. So in this section, we have all of my Charco Press books, which are hard because they are really pretty and I like them a lot, and I love the idea of Charco Press, and I've loved a lot of Charco Press's books. However, not all of these sound interesting to me anymore. The first one I know I definitely want to unhaul is The German Room by Carla Meliandi. I tried to read this one for a previous TBR takedown video and could not get into it whatsoever. So I do think that I want to kind of move this one along, and hopefully someone else will enjoy it more than me. Okay, the next one that I'm questioning is Loop by Brenda Lozano, so let's read the back. Recovering from an unspecified accident, the narrator of Loop finds herself in waiting rooms of different kinds, airport departure lounges, doctor's surgeries, and above all, at home, awaiting the return of her boyfriend who has traveled to Spain following the death of his mother. Loop is a love story told from the perspective of a contemporary Penelope, who, instead of weaving and unraveling her shroud, writes and erases her thoughts in her ideal notebook. At once funny and thought-provoking, her thoughts range from her stationary preferences to the different scales on which life is lived, while a cast of unlikely characters cross the page. Written in an assured, irreverent style, Loop is the journal of an absence, one in which the most minute or whimsical observations open up universes. So it kind of sounds like it's going to be experimental and fragmented a bit, but the idea of it does sound quite interesting, so I think I'm going to keep this one around. The back immediately caught my interest, so that is a good sign that I do still want to read this, whereas when I picked up The German Room, the back did not sound interesting at all, so I don't think I need to read like the first 5 pages in this situation. I do think I'm going to keep it. Okay, so this one is A Perfect Cemetery by Federico Falco. On the back, this says, in the middle of a blizzard, a widow watches the ruin of her late husband's garden until suddenly she sees a woman running naked in the falling snow. After telling her parents that she abandoned her Christian faith, a girl becomes infatuated with a Mormon missionary who reminds her of a boy killed in her village years ago. When his family comes home at last, a father desperately offers his daughter's hand in marriage to anyone who will take them in. And a town's mayor tries to fulfill his father's dying wish to design the perfect cemetery. The mountains of Argentina pulse with life in these disarming stories of people radically reinventing themselves in order to find love and connection, to escape their pasts, and to seek a way out of the banalities of sorrow and loss in the present. So this is a collection of stories, apparently. It sounds pretty interesting to me. I don't think that I can really do like a 5-page test in this situation because it is a short story collection and each story is going to be different. But it is still capturing my interest enough that I do think that I want to give it a go. Okay, so this is another one that I've tried to read in the TBR takedown, and that is Death Takes Me by Cristina Rivera Garza. You may not have seen this video yet, so it's gonna be like a slight spoiler, but unfortunately I think I'm gonna unhaul this. I really did not like it. I got 20% in and ended up DNFing it. I found it to be quite fractured, quite stylized, and very difficult to follow, and I really did not find a way to connect with these characters. So I think I'm going to unhaul this one, sadly. Hopefully someone else likes it better than I did. Okay, so the next one I want to talk about is The Story of My Teeth by Valeria Lucelli. I'm gonna read the back of this one as well. Sanchez is a late-in-life world traveler, yarn spinner, collector, and legendary auctioneer. The Story of My Teeth is an elegant, witty, exhilarating romp through the industrial suburbs of Mexico City and Lucelli's own literary influences as a meditation on, as Highway says, the variable value of art. It's sounding kind of dry to me. I don't know that I'm that excited about this one anymore. It's just hard because I really like the cover and I like the fact that this has like a mixed media thing happening in it, where there are like interesting art pieces and like pages in here of like different patterns and art things. So I think this is going to be one where I want to like read the first couple pages and see if it sounds interesting to me at all, because I really want to like this, but it really does not sound interesting to me anymore. So I'm gonna add this to the pile of maybes. Okay, next up we have Higher Ground by Anki Stelling. This says it is a ferocious and funny tirade on motherhood, parenthood, family, friendship, and social class, all thrust into battle. Rezi is a writer in her mid-40s, married to Sven, a painter. With their 4 children, they live in an apartment in Berlin where their lease is controlled by some of their closest friends. Those same friends all live nearby in a glitzy new residential co-op that they built together. Those friends grew up cocooned in upper-class affluence. Rezi did not. But they all thought that their friendship would overcome the class divide. Then Rezi writes a piece skewering the bourgeoisie leanings of her friends. They retaliate by terminating her lease and kicking her family out of the apartment. Incensed, Rezi sees clearly now the nature of their relationship and turns to her 14-year-old daughter, determined to explain to her the hard realities of life, especially the myth of upward mobility in today's world. Wow, I feel like that told us like a lot about what the book is. I still am interested in this, and I really, really like the feel of this book, as much as I don't want to let covers or the book's feel influence whether or not I want to read it. I still am interested in the premise of this, and I do think that I'm going to keep this one. Okay, so next up is a book that everyone seems to like but me. It is I Want to Die, But I Want to Eat Tteokbokki. Unfortunately, I started reading this and really didn't like it. Maybe I just wasn't in the right headspace for it. But I really just did not find it to be super interesting or compelling. I just think that it felt like a lot to me in the moment that I read it, and I'm a little scared to try to read it again. If anything, I may audiobook this. I just don't feel like that compelled to read it, and I've had it for a while now. However, it is a beautiful cover, and the Under the Dust jacket is also beautiful. So I feel a little bit sad to get rid of it, but I do think that it is time to move on from this book, considering that I've had it for quite a while and have actively put off reading it. So I think I'm going to unhaul this. Okay, so next up are 2 books by Hiromi Kawakami. I have People from My Neighborhood, which is a short story collection, and Strange Weather in Tokyo. I've had both of these for a while and have not felt excited to read either of them. So this one says, Tsukiko, I think, 38, works in an office and lives alone. One night, she happens to meet one of her former high school teachers, Sensei, in a local bar. He is 30 years her senior, retired, and presumably a widower. Their relationship develops from a perfunctory acknowledgement of each other to a hesitant intimacy which tilts awkwardly and poignantly into love. Strange Weather in Tokyo is a moving, funny, and immersive tale of modern Japan and old-fashioned romance. I feel very conflicted because this feels kind of similar to some other books that I've read where there's a weird power dynamic between student and teacher in a romantic relationship. And yeah, I just don't know whether I love that idea anymore or if I really want to explore that any more than I have in the past. So I think I'm going to put this on the maybe list to read a few pages of. Okay, so this one, as much as I love the cover, it does feel like a very random collection of stories. They're interlinked and apparently blend the mundane and the mythical. I don't know that I'm that excited about this anymore, unfortunately. Just with me not really being super excited about short story collections, I'm feeling a bit more picky about the stories that I read. Also, in this tiny little book, there are like 2 pages worth of contents of different stories. Each story seems like it's like only 2 pages long. So I don't know that I'm gonna like that aspect of it either, if there's going to be any sort of continuity or if it's going to feel like each story is fully developed. I don't know. This might be a situation where I read a couple of stories, since you know each story is like 2 pages, just to see if I like the vibe, but I think I'm leaning towards unhauling this one. Okay, I feel like I'm being pretty ruthless with my books here. I do think that most of these I do want to keep around. The rest of them, Sweet Bean Paste is the only one that's kind of a maybe, but I do think that I am still interested in this, so I am going to keep it for now, though it may be something that I, you know, end up unhauling later if it's still something that I'm not super excited about, but it still sounds interesting to me, so I think I'm going to keep it for now. Okay, so that is all the translated books, and that's the end of this shelf, so let's move on to our general fiction. Okay, we're back to sitting down. I'm just going to grab from here since everything is pretty easily accessible. The first book I want to talk about is Waiting for Ted by Mariak Big. I read this for a TBR takedown video and really disliked it, and I really don't see a need to keep it around, so I think I'm gonna unhaul this one. Okay, so this one is Reason She Goes to the Woods by Deborah K. Davies. I do really like this cover. It is about a young girl named Pearl. It says, Pearl can be very, very good. More often, though, she is very, very bad. She is just a child, a mystery to all who know her, a little girl who has her own secret reasons for escaping to the nearby woods. What might these reasons be? How can she feel so at home in the dark, sinister, sensual woods, a wonder of secrets and mystery? Told in vignettes across Pearl's childhood years, Reasons She Goes to the Woods is a nervy and lyrical novel about a girl growing up and trying to be normal even if she doesn't know what normal quite is. I think that the vignette style is not going to be my favorite at this point, though it seems kind of silly to get rid of it considering, you know, every single page is only one-sided, so it's going to be a pretty quick read in reality. But I just don't really feel excited about it, so I'm going to put it in the pile to read a couple pages of and see if it sparks any interest. Okay, so this one is also a maybe. It is Peach by Emma Glass. So I did enjoy her other book, Rest and Be Thankful, but it is very much a disjointed, kind of stylized work, and I don't know whether that, like I said before, is going to be my thing anymore. This is also just very, very short, so it may be worth just giving it a read for the sake of knowing if I like it for sure. I may end up getting a couple pages into this and feel like, you know, it's worth it to continue. So I think that this is going to go on the maybe list, and I may just start reading it and see how it goes. Okay, these ones I'll go over quickly because they're ones that I've read, so they don't really contribute to the TBR takedown aspect of this. But they are Afternoon of a Fawn, which I read and did not like in a TBR takedown video. And then the other one is Negative Space by Gillian Linden, which I read in 2024, I believe, and just found unmemorable. So I really just don't see the need to keep this around anymore. So I think both of these are going to be an unhaul. Okay, and then finally I have Blob by Maggie Sue, which I also read and think I'm going to probably part ways with. I did not love this, and if I ever wanted to read it again, I have the audiobook. So yeah, not my favorite one, and I think I'm going to pass this along to someone who hopefully will like it better. Okay, so let's get into the books that are maybes. I'm going to read a couple pages of each of these, and then I will report back with my thoughts on each of them. Okay, so after reading the first like 10 pages of The Story of My Teeth, I am not really loving the writing style. It feels like he's just kind of recounting things from his past, and then I kind of skipped through to a little bit further and he's just recounting how Mexico was after the war, and I don't know, it's just really not connecting with me, and it's unfortunate because I like the concept of this book and I like the fact that it has pretty pictures, but it's really not my favorite, so I think I'm going to unhaul this. But reading a couple pages was helpful in making my decision, so let's continue. Yeah, so only a couple pages into this. I do think that I do want to read it. It is, again, very stylized, but the stylization fits the theme of this book, which is a woman who is staggering around town in the aftermath of an assault, and I won't go any further into that, but considering it's only like 80 pages, and I think that the stylization does fit with what the subject matter is, I think I'm going to keep it and read it later. Okay, so after reading the first chapter of this book, I can officially say that I'm not super interested in it. and I think that I'm going to pass it along to the next person who might like it better. No particular reason, it just didn't capture my interest in the first chapter, and I know that books can take a while to get exciting, but I was already sort of on the fence about it and leaning towards getting rid of it, so I think I'm gonna follow that instinct and unhaul it. Okay, so as I suspected with this book, it really did not feel like each individual story had much substance, and I guess I didn't get far enough into it to really say whether the interconnectedness felt like everything had substance. I like the idea that each kind of story is a little picture of part of a community, and that over time you see all of these people in the community and it sort of builds into a cohesive narrative, but I just don't think I like this author's writing style, and it just doesn't feel like a book that I'm excited to come back to. So since I've had this on my shelf for probably 5 years, I think I'm going to send it along. Okay, so this is another one that is vignettes and feels a bit fragmented, but for the right reasons in this situation. I read a couple pages and it's basically just this young girl running around the woods, and there's an undercurrent of weirdness, but I haven't gotten to the weird part yet, but it has made me interested in finding out what the weirdness is all about. And it kind of parallels some of my memories of running around in the woods as a kid. So I do think I'm gonna keep this. I'm surprised that I'm still interested in it, but I think I am. So I think I'm gonna keep this one. Okay, so the last two are these. I have Because They Wanted To by Mary Gateskill and All That Remains by Sue Black. I do think that both of these are going to get unhauled. I think, unfortunately, just the fact that I didn't love Bad Behavior does not make me excited to read this, and I'm kind of over it in terms of her writing. And for this one, I just think that it's going to feel too dense and sciencey for me to want to physically read this, and in the event that I am really, really interested in this book later, I can always audiobook it. So that's kind of my feelings about these two, and I think I'm going to unhaul them both. Okay, so this is my unhaul. I think that's pretty successful given the fact that I didn't feel like there was even that much to get rid of on my shelves. I feel like I keep it relatively pared down, but I haven't done this in a little while. So these are the books that I'm going to unhaul. Some of them are read and some of them will be removed from my TBR takedown, which will help my numbers out a little bit, so I can't complain about that. But it's time for me to go update my TBR takedown numbers, so I'm gonna go do that. If you enjoyed this video, feel free to like and subscribe, and I will catch you in the next one. Bye.